Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, Crystal Palace 3, Aston Villa 2. First of all, mate, how are you doing?
I'd be a lot better if that scoreline was reversed, mate.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, is my honest assessment of that question. But no, basically, it's all been summed up in the sort of the last like 5 or so minutes since before you joined me actually. So I came upstairs. You've been working. You're doing the most at the moment, mate. I think we actually need to give you some appreciation on air about the grind that you're going through the other day. Like I loved your tweet the other day about saying you were popping questions to Carlo Ancelotti one day and the next you were on your break at Mackey's. I mean, mate, if that isn't holding down the grind and keeping it real, I don't know what is, mate. So you're doing the most at the moment. I do want to give you some appreciation on air for that because
I appreciate that, man.
That's some serious hard work, mate. But I come upstairs, and I'm setting up the Zoom call for you, and I'm like getting all my podcast out, getting my mic out the stand and everything like that. And like in sort of like a bit of a huff, I guess, I put my ring light down on the table and it just snaps in half.
Mine's done the same, actually.
Just cleaning, like the stand just came off, and I just sort of sat there, like you ever just like been so sort of annoyed and disappointed, you just stare at it. I just like looked at this ring and I was like, not my day. Not my day, but I'm all the better for seeing you, mate, for sure.
Likewise, mate. Likewise. And again, as Dan just alluded to that, much like the United game, haven't seen the whole of this. So this is essentially going to be me kind of trying to pry information from Dan about this game. I've seen the highlights. I've been updated with my dad as soon as I got through the door. Dan's given me a quick synopsis. But Dan, I mean, first of all, from what I've seen, Villa first half, it was very good. And I think this is a performance in the first half that I think we were hoping for, that we were maybe expecting, because before this we were kind of looking at these final seven, and Palace and Everton were the two where you were thinking Villa really need to pick up points against these. Looking at, obviously, we've got Tottenham and Chelsea next. We've played Manchester City, Manchester United recently, and Villa come out of the gates. John McGinn scores, of all people, as well. Again, I feel like every podcast, Dan, there's a redemption story because everybody is so quick to write off these players, and it really does. It has me racking my brains at times. I think you're more than fair to kind of criticize performances and that, but I feel like we have very short memories. And it sounds as, again, just so I'm not completely shutting down anyone who's saying they don't rate McGinn. It sounds like he's had a game, a different two halves in this game, Dan. But John McGinn has not scored a goal in the longest time. I'm sure you can tell me when he last scored a goal in the Premier League, Dan. And he takes it really well. And it's one of the things, Dan, we always kind of say, Villa create a lot of chances, but they don't actually take a lot of shots. And as that early cross is teed in by Elmo, the Palace defence are relatively well set, but their midfield hasn't really quite adjusted to pick up the run of McGinn. He just takes it on first time and just strokes it in. It's a wonderful goal to put Villa 1-0 up, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And it was a nice very nice start to the afternoon for John McGinn, who obviously captains the side. He's off Aston Villa's 5th captain of the season after Jack, Tyrone, Elmo, and quite famously Dominic Ravan, who captained the club against Liverpool, obviously in the Cup. So McGinn, our 5th captain of the season. It must have been a nice moment for him personally to lead that side out. And the goal was really nice. I feel like they played it, obviously you won't have seen it, but they played it down a little bit on Sky because it gets a slight deflection off James McCarthy. And that's sort of the angle that they took on Sky, saying that was what took it past Jack Butland and ultimately left the keeper with very little chance. But I think McGinn deserves real credit for how he comes onto that ball, because I think you see so many players in that situation just run onto that, lean back, and it goes straight into Rosette. Do you know what I mean?
Well, you see John McGinn do that, don't you?
Yeah, well, exactly. I think it takes quite a cool head to sort of come onto that, open your body up, take it on with your left foot as well, which obviously I know is sort of trademark McGinn in some situations, but to sort of have the nous to not take that on with the right foot, and I think it was a really nice goal, mate. And I think it summed up what was quite a nice start to the game for Villa. We dominated from the first whistle, but as the game proved as it went on, we really failed to stamp our authority on the game after going ahead. We sort of let the game become transitional again. We let Crystal Palace gain confidence. I mean, and that that I think was a consistent problem for Villa throughout the game.
Yeah, and I mean Palace, they came back, swift reply, some nice footwork from Zaha in the kind of initial build up, and then that ball that gets played into Big Chris it's vintage Chris, isn't it? You know he's going to score there. It's unlucky. I think they've done their homework. I'm not sure why Mings wasn't in the squad. I'm going to assume injury through his little collision with Emmy at the end of the last game. Dean didn't really say anything in the press conference to us about that. And massive Courtney fans on the podcast. I know there's people. It is a vocal minority who do think Courtney is owed a bit of a better chance. But if you're going to do your homework, Big Chris is obviously going to put himself on Courtney rather than Ezri Konsa, isn't he? And it's a good goal. You can argue that Villa need to deal with the cross a little bit better, maybe, but they create a nice little overload there. Palace do, and without no Matty Cash was there. We've got Elmo playing right back, and I've seen a lot of people on Twitter going, "Oh well, El Mohammadi, he's done whatever, blah blah blah." I think you can't. I find it difficult to kind of criticise Elmo because we know where he's at. Like, of course, he is not Matty Cash, and that it's been evident since we signed Elmo what the flaws are in his game. But I feel like it's just kind of, especially near the end of the season, it's one of them things where it's like, well, you kind of got to expect these things from Elmo, and I know you shouldn't really, but he's not going to be at the club next year. Freddie Gilbert will hopefully be coming back as the backup right back for Matty Cash because it's clear from these past two games, mate, that we really have missed the right back, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, look, the defence was. I don't think it was necessarily the defence that was poor today. Again, I don't really think the midfield did the back four too much justice. But I think the reason why Villa's defence has been so good this season is because of the consistency we've been able to achieve. I mean, that back five, as it is with the goalkeeper involved, is nailed on, isn't it, Dan? The rest of the squad is pretty much up for debate. But that back five is nailed on. And when you make two changes to that and you're almost swapping out half of that back line, it's going to cause problems. And I mean, look, before this game, Palace has scored just twice in their last 6 home games. And so they've really struggled to score at Selhurst Park recently. And today, they had 23 shots, which was their highest since February 2019. So, this side who have really been stagnating in attack in recent games, haven't had that many shots since, more than 2 years ago now. Villa allowed them that. And I think that's Villa fans' biggest gripe today is, look, I don't think anyone had a particularly great game. I think, I don't think anyone played particularly poorly either in that back line. There's not one player you can go like that Benteke goal, mate. I think, to be honest with you, I just hold my hands up there and go, that's a good goal. I have no. Yeah. What more can you do? The way that Benteke gets up towers over Courtney, and I don't think that's Courtney's fault. We all know the hang time that Benteke can achieve when he just gets up into positions like that on the back of the defender. It's unstoppable. The header's great. What more? Yeah, you can. The cliche is always stop the cross, but you can only do so much. And I don't particularly have too much beef with that goal personally, but. I mean, Courtney didn't have his best game, but he played about as well as you can expect, given how little he's played recently. I mean, you can't be coming into that back line and putting in 10 out of 10s when you haven't played in months. I think we missed Tyrone's leadership and his voice, because even those who don't necessarily laud Tyrone perhaps as much as they should have, we know that he is a player that unfortunately divides the Villa fan base. I don't think anyone could. I mean, you are better suited to talk about this than anyone, mate. Being there, you've been to so many games, mate. And the first thing I always say is, "Oh, what do you see? What can you smell? What can you hear?" Because I miss all those things about Villa Park. And you always say the one thing that you can hear is Tyrone Mings, and I don't think that's a quality of his that can be underestimated.
No, it's not. And, I was actually going to bring that up just then, mate. So it was a wonderful segue. It's, you can criticize Ty for being lackadaisical at times. You can criticize him for being too casual, too nonchalant. But Villa need a leader out there. And there aren't many leaders with a real voice on this in this squad, on this pitch. I think Emmy's a fantastic leader. He's, again, one that you can always hear. But you shouldn't be having your goalkeeper commanding, what the ongoings of the whole pitch. Goalkeepers should never be captains. It's my biggest pet peeve in football. Hugo Lloris is not a captain. Give the armband to Harry Kane. It does my head in that Tottenham have Hugo Lloris as a captain. And Emmy, they have a somewhat of an advantage being able to see the game unfold to a certain extent. But you need someone who is either at the back or in the middle of the game that can really get stuck in. And, you know, as I say, I keep banging on about it every time, Dan, we do a podcast, because Ty gets a lot of stick. But I guarantee the 10,000 people that are lucky enough to go to the Chelsea game, they'll realise how important Tyrone Mings actually is to this squad. Because it's not, you know, I sit at the back of the North Stand. Again, we're frauds, heart of the whole, I know. You can't hear them, right? I'll always remember going to Loftus Road for QPR away. It was a Tuesday night. I think we drew, no, I think they beat us 2-1. It was the promotion year. And I was 5 rows from the front. And all I could hear was Axel and Oyan communicating. And you don't get afforded that at Villa Park because it's a big stadium. You know, you're not close to the pitch. It's very open. But it's only when you go to these away days, when you go to your Rotherhams, when you go to your QPRs like that, you can actually, you kind of appreciate football for, you know, just kind of, you know, as the sport you grew up and played a bit more. Because I feel like there's some sort of disconnect. These are, of course, elite level athletes. We just kind of assume it comes naturally. But, you know, you hear everything that you'd be saying to your teammates on the Sunday League pitches that you did when you were 12, when you were 13, whatever. And I think, you know, the same kind of goes to kind of harp it back to that, the clip that went viral of Mings telling Barkley to fuck off on Twitter. That's normal. People turn that into something it absolutely isn't. And I guarantee if the camera was on Barkley's probably told him to fuck off as well, because that's just how it goes. If you guys think that, you know, you play football without clashing with your mates, and I don't think you've been playing football correctly. I think, Dan, the amount of times we've, you know, five-a-side at uni, mate, we go mental. We go mental at our teammates. You know, they were big games. I've digressed a bit there, but yeah, Tyrone's leadership was clearly missed today. But again, Dan, back to another player who, again, fans seem to enjoy writing off. He scored his 9th goal in the Premier League this season, Dan. He's been included in the Netherlands, I think, provisional 30-man squad. Anwar El Ghazi. This is vintage Anwar as well. Ball at the back post, ice in his veins with the finish first time. I'm just so happy. I'm so happy for Anwar personally. Obviously, he's just finished with Ramadan as well. It was Eid the other day, wasn't it? So it's nice to know that, you know, he won't be fasting. So, you know, maybe he'll get better performances because, you know, more nutrition, that kind of stuff. It's a vintage Anwar goal, and it's a shame. You know, it's a worthy match winner if you're going off the first half, aren't you? I think that kind of almost personified the first half. It personified the resilience that Anwar El Ghazi has. And again, I just love seeing him prove the doubt was wrong, man, because so many people have tried to write him, McGinn, Douglas off in recent weeks. And, you know, he's here to stay. He's scored so many important goals for the Villa, Dan, hasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And that's, again, another positive that's come out today. And I think the way you have to break down Anwar's numbers is like, that's now double figures for the season in all comps, which is, you know, a fantastic return from a player who's been not consistently starting. You know, at the start of the season, Trezeguet was getting that nod. Bertrand Traore is the new signing, and who's had a very good season in his own right, has also rightly, you know, commanded himself a lot of game time. And so when you look at Anwar's numbers in terms of just 15 starts, having 9 Premier League goals is quite the return. And I think you talked at the top of this podcast, mate, about players who perhaps feel like they have to play to prove a point. You know, it's like other players can have bad games and are afforded the luxury of playing the next game. You know, you think of like John McGinn, who for a large proportion of this season wasn't firing on all cylinders for whatever reason that may have been. 9 times out of 10 found himself in the starting lineup the next week. And John's a very important player to this squad. But in those winger spots, you do feel like with Anwar or Trezeguet, when they're both fit, I know we haven't had that option, but one plays badly one game, the other one gets dropped in. Those positions, Anwar must feel like he constantly has to play well in every game and to nail himself down in the next one, especially with Jack coming back. You know, he must be looking over his shoulder and thinking, well, me or Bertrand are going to miss out here. And there's always a tendency in football to lean towards your new signing, isn't there? You know, Bertrand's just come in the summer. Managers want to play their new players, and that's the way that football works. There's a bias towards those kind of players. So Anwar must be looking over his shoulder, but he's delivering. He really is. And I think to the point now where I think it's Bertrand that's sacrificed, given how he's playing. And I think when Jack is eventually fit, that's the sub he'll make. But in terms of Anwar, for him to now, that's the first time he's hit double figures since he was playing for Ajax, which is also when he was last involved with the Dutch national team. He got called up for their qualifiers for the 2016 Euros. It's looking promising for Anwar, and I can't think of a better reward for all the crap he's got this season, especially our fans. He's deleted all his socials. People are quick to forget. People are, maybe your praise be as loud as your disrespect, I think one certain Villa player said. And, for the season he's gone through, if he makes the Euros at the end of it, that will be some beautiful, beautiful scenes, mate. I absolutely love that, and I'm sure you would too.
100%, man. He's pound for pound, arguably one of Villa's better signings in recent years, paid around the 5 million mark. It was like 7 million euros, I think, after the loan, especially when you're comparing that to another winger that left Lille, Nicola Pepe, who cost Arsenal 72 million pounds, and Anwar has outperformed him, not only this season, but last season as well, which is, of course, important. And talking about pound for pound signings, insane value. Emi Martinez, wonderful save from a Benteke header from a corner. Again, I've run out of words to describe how good Emi Martinez is, and I can't wait for people to actually, witness that greatness live, because again, I appreciate I'm in a very privileged position where I've been able to go and watch the games and have a bit of a sort of deeper understanding of how this team kind of is, because it's not the same on TV. We're going to get back to the grounds, and I feel like after obviously, because we're not there, it's one of them things where you kind of need to, I mentioned this in our last podcast, when something bad happens, you kind of vent, you get it out your system, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then it's not even that deep the next day, but we're kind of sat here mulling on things, getting on Twitter with, there's nothing else to do. People are still furloughed. We're not back in the grounds. We're still locked down. People don't have anything better to do. And we're kind of getting ourselves worked up over a lot. We're safe. We've got 2 games left. Like it's fine. I appreciate football is a massive escape for people, but I think we do probably put a bit too much on it at times. And I'm guilty of that. Villa heavily influences my mood. It heavily influences your mood, Dan. I mean, we do a podcast about Villa. We can't say it doesn't. It dictates our life. Aston Villa is dictating our life right now, Dan. But I feel like that kind of doom and gloom after a loss. By the time you're in the train, by the time you're in the car on the way back, it doesn't really matter. So I feel like it's just one of them ones. Again, I know sometimes we get people in the comment, we try to be optimistic. It's not for no reason. I think, obviously we've had a bit of time to mull on this, Dan, not as much as some of the other podcasts we've done recently, but I mean, you shouldn't lose to Crystal Palace again. I'm not really excusing that. They've not been a great side. They kind of feel like they're coming to the end of this sort of Hodgson tenure, aren't they? I think with Frank Lampard available, with Eddie Howe available, I think there are managers that, there's an appealing project for. I think they've got very exciting players. They've got a new stadium on the horizon, Category 1 academy. There's a lot. The Palace are a great club. There's a ceiling with Crystal Palace. I think. I just don't see Roy Hodgson taking them any further than he has. They've kind of established themselves in the Premier League now, and you've just got to look at the likes of Zaha, who brings them. He equalises with his goal. It's an unfortunate deflection, but I think Konsa kind of struggles because he doesn't really. He steps out, doesn't he? And he's not committed to showing Zaha down to the touchline until it's too late. And with a winger as good as Wolf, that's always going to happen. And as soon as that happened, Dan, I mean, by the looks of it, they just kind of knew what they had to do, didn't they? They really went for it. And Villa are unfortunately a side, Dan, where if you get in our faces, if you're aggressive, if you just constantly press, we'll eventually crack, won't we?
Yeah. And I think, we're banging that game management drum, Dan, and I think if Villa are to take a step up to the next level, we need to just be able to play out second halves. You see it a lot of times in modern football where, and I'm not saying Villa are at this stage yet, but we need to show signs of just being able to just take our foot off the gas, dictate a game for 45 minutes and be a dominant force, not to create too much ourselves or let the opposition create, and just play pretty boring football. It would be nice. And, you see, it's really been reminded how useful that is, because when you watch, and this probably isn't a great time to talk about this actually, but when you watch Tuchel's Chelsea, who didn't do this yesterday, I know, but they don't, he came in and for a larger portion of the time, they didn't blow sides away. They just shut up shop. They get a goal, get a second if it can be afforded, and just play a game out. And they won a lot of games on the bounce, conceded very few, playing that kind of football. And I think if Villa are to take a step up to that level, we need to just be able to control games, mate, because we went a goal up and allowed Palace back into the game. We went 2-1 up, allowed Palace into a game. And then once you allow an opposition to do that twice, their heads go up, they gain the confidence to go on and get a third. And it is frustrating. And, you do feel as though you're repeating yourselves a little bit talking about this, and that's what is bugging me, is because the things that are hindering this Villa side are the same things that have been hindering us for a long time. And people have rightly sort of had a look at Dean for that. I saw a few people questioning his substitutions and stuff like that. And again, I have a little bit of sympathy for the gaffer there, because we're not blessed with quality on the bench. I saw a few people saying that, typical Dino, just brings on a couple of strikers to try and combat it. And yeah, I get that. I get that that's frustrating. But you look past Keenan and Wesley, and you've got Barkley, who, if we touches, there's an inevitable meltdown. And then, after, to be fair, Nakamba is there. I'll register that, but I get that. I think that would have been a nice sub to make. But what beyond Nakamba, I don't think it's the right time. I'm desperate to see Carney get some minutes, mates, but I don't think that's the right environment to be bringing that kid on for his debut. Chucking a 16, 17-year-old kid out there into that to try and stem the tide of this game. It's not the right time to do that. And we're not blessed with quality on the bench. So I do have a little bit of sympathy with the gaffer on that one. But yeah, no, it is frustrating, mate. But we've got 2 tough games coming up now to close out the season. And hopefully, with that Chelsea game, with the fans there, just having one last moment to cheer to end out what's been still a very, very positive season. I think we need to keep drilling home that note, mate, where we're sat in the league. It's been such an improvement on last year. It would just be nice if we had one last hurrah, wouldn't it?
It wouldn't matter. It would. It's been difficult. Listen, it's going to be really tough. And hopefully, to segue into XG, Villa will have a bit of a better time. Although I don't really expect us to. Crystal Palace XG of 2.01 compared to Villa's 1.4, which is lackluster, to say the least. So it's good. I mean, we defied XG, which is always a positive to take, but not many teams lose to Palace, both on real goals and expected goals. So that is a bit of a tough one to swallow for someone like me. But nevertheless, Dan, we will be back. You will be back, specifically sometime tomorrow or the day after, with a preview for Aston Villa's next game. Just like to give again everyone a massive shout out who's watching the podcast recently. It's not really. It's not. I understand people don't want to listen when Villa aren't doing too well. It's easy. You get all kinds of people. I mean, you look at the Everton game, 6,500 views. That's amazing. That's what happens when we win, and then we're struggling to break like 700. But to the 700 of you who've watched all these podcasts, you guys are the real MVPs. This season's been mad for us and for Villa. So yeah, I think we just need to kind of try and end the season on a positive. I'm so happy for everybody that's going to the game. I wasn't fortunate enough to get a ticket. Dan, I don't think you were either. We've both been unlucky there. But listen, you guys are going to have an absolutely amazing time. We can't wait to hear all about it. We will see you very soon for another edition of the Villa podcast. Like, comment, subscribe, and up the Villa.